there are photos of it dead in the desert underneath the Brontosaurus, and you're like going, there's an ambulance under the Brontosaurus. I am somewhat obsessed with the Cannonball Run. So is a certain person that runs an amazing app called VINwiki, and an equally amazing YouTube channel, Car Stories. So about 4 years ago, I met Ed at the Cannonball Run reunion in Darien, Connecticut. Knew who Ed was, had no idea if he knew who I was. I was just the idiot that owned the ambulance from the Cannonball Run. The ambulance is a 1978 Dodge Sportsman B200, and they couldn't have picked a worse vehicle and a worse year. And the reason why I say that is in 1978, the Dodge van had a major overhaul. They had a bigger turn signal, a recessed door handle, a larger rear taillight, and a completely different dashboard. Though it looks the same from 71 to roughly 77, 78 was a crossover year, and Brock Yates, Hal Needham decided to use a 78. Not only that, it's a sliding door with barn doors on the back, and a Sportsman with a sunroof, which is the hardest thing on God's green earth. I can find you as many 69 Dodge Charger Daytonas or Superbirds that you would like, but I beg of you to go find me a 78 Dodge B200. 6-window slider with barn doors. After being obsessed with the Blues Brothers and all these years of chasing down the Dukes of Hazzard stuff, it was a natural progression because the Dodge is a Mopar product to work our way through the Cannonball Run. I saw the Cannonball Run movie in 1981 at the Westlake Drive-In with my mom and dad on the big screen at the drive-in movie theater. And I was like, this can't be real. Like, this is the greatest movie, I mean, ever. You know, it's got all these cars and the Lamborghini with the Hawaiian Tropic stuff, and they put one in the pool, and like, what a great idea. An ambulance across the country, like, oh my God. I had no idea it was a real thing, obviously. And I really had no idea through the early 2000s that it was a real thing. Like, I had no idea that the Cannonball Run actually happened. And with the evolution of the internet and everything, and Brock Yates' book, it happened. And I'm like going, man, this is cool. And then to find out that Brock and Hal drove the ambulance and Pam was the patient and Lyle Royer's the doctor, like they gave all the competitors in 79 a notepad and said, if anything happens, write it down. And then they took all that and turned it into a movie. And they already had success with Hal and Brock had success with Smokey and the Bandit. What could go wrong, right? So to find out that the ambulance was the same ambulance that they drove and then they filmed with, I was like, man, I got to go find this thing. I had already found the first General Lee. Why on God's green earth can't I go find the ambulance from the movie Cannonball Run? I didn't even know where to start, didn't know where to begin. I'd found out that they drove the ambulance. The ambulance was built in 79. They ordered it, the orange and the white, Spinnaker white and Sunrise orange. You can order a van that ugly that year. They ordered it. They shipped it to Bill Mitchell's shop in Connecticut. He did all the suspension work and turned it into a race car, basically. They put a Dick Landy 502 big block and a quicker transmission in it, so it had an overdrive transmission. Completely untested, but Hal and Brock came up with it at a bar on the Sunset Strip and said, Hal told Brock, you got to do it one more time. And they came up with the greatest vehicle in the history of road rally, because who is going to stop an ambulance? So they all show up at the Goodwife Shopping Center, and on April Fool's Day, they're going to take off and drive across the country. And everyone, and John Harrison will tell you, and a lot of the competitors from 79, they were afraid of the ambulance because it was such a great idea. And it sounds like a Winston Cup car, and it is just rowdy. And they've got a doctor, a real doctor, and a patient that's like, she's tied into just dripping all over herself. And what can go wrong? So it came time to go. And the ambulance pulls around back and click, click, and it goes about 50 feet and dies and won't start. And it was completely untested, and it had all the great stuff, but not enough know how to make this thing go, go, go. So Hal Needham, of course, always walked around with $100 bills, and every time you see him, he has a big gold chain and never mind my Rolex kind of thing, and he had $100 bills, and he said, I'm going to peel off $100 bills until someone here can get this damn thing running, because Hal had a pretty filthy mouth. And there was two good old boys that broke into an auto parts store in Darien, Connecticut, and got just enough parts to make the carburetor right to get the Holly 850 going, and they were gone. And that thing was on rails. And the original ambulance got pulled over in New Jersey by Mark Finnick, and they had let him go because the story that they tell in the movie is basically the same story that was told by Lyle Royer. They said they had to get the senator's wife to UCLA because she had cysts on the walls of her lungs. And that's what happened. So they drove it all the way across the United States, got to Effingham in Illinois. It started pissing transmission fluid, and all of this untested stuff finally came back to bite him in the tail. The longest story short is there are pictures of Brock and Hal covered in transmission fluid, because on one of those vans, you can kick the cover over and it exposes the engine below between your legs. And there is the dipstick hole right there. And they were pouring transmission fluid in it as they drove it across the country to get it to where it eventually died. It died at the Wheel Inn in the Palm Desert, and it is the same place in Pee-wee's Big Adventure where the dinosaurs are. And not only did it die, it caught fire and then died. And there are photos of it dead in the desert underneath the Brontosaurus. And you're like, oh, and there's an ambulance under the Brontosaurus. Not only is there an ambulance, but it's on fire. And, Pam and Lyle are jumping out of this thing. This is on fire. It eventually went out and it didn't destroy the whole thing. But Hal Needham had to get to the Portofino Inn, and he's got a stack of hundreds, and he walks, this is a truck stop, and said, who owns the low boy out here? And these two good old boys said, that's us. Hal said, what's it going to take to get us into the Portofino Inn? And we don't want a DNF. Did not finish. So he peeled off just enough $100 bills, just like he did on the other coast. And there was a gap between the Brontosaurus and the flatbed trailer, the low boy, and they had to get it onto there. And if there was photos of it on there and photos of it off of there, but there is a healthy gap. Hal Needham was the world's greatest stunt man, and this thing would still run, but it wouldn't run well. And that 3 or 4 foot gap off the ledge that the Brontosaurus is sitting on, and where the truck is backed up, the flatbed, Hal Needham jumped the ambulance onto the flatbed, stopped it, they chained it down. Hal, Brock, Pam, Lyle, the 2 truck drivers drove into the Portofino Inn and towed the ambulance. To this day, I have no idea how they got it off the trailer at the Portofino Inn, but they did. So I was obsessed with this goofy ambulance. I thought it was the greatest thing on God's green earth. They had the greatest road rally vehicle. Why would you stop this thing? They had just enough stories, lights and sirens. They filmed the movie with the same ambulance. And then Hal Needham told me a long time ago, he said, if you ever want to lose a lot of money, buy a NASCAR team, which I agree with. Hal Needham owned Harry Gant's number 33 Skull Bandit NASCAR, whatever it was, Monte Carlo back then. And the reason why they called it the Skull Bandit was he co-owned it with Burt Reynolds, the Bandit. Hal had a side project with the Budweiser rocket car, and they were setting land speed records, but it was only a 3-wheeled car, so they did not officiate or include any of the land speed records because it didn't have 4 wheels. But you would see the Budweiser rocket car go down the Salt Flats, and it's now in the Talladega Motor Speedway Hall of Fame Museum. But then a few minutes later, you would see the Transcon Medevac right behind it. And Hal used it as a support vehicle for his efforts as the land speed record. So if there are videos of him out there, and there's the ambulance right behind it. It kind of fell into disrepair, obviously. Things lose interest. And Hal donated the ambulance when he owned his NASCAR team to the NASCAR Women's Wives Auxiliary, and they auctioned it off for a tax write-off for Mr. Needham. And they auctioned it to a flower shop in North Carolina. So they had a big block Dick Landy 502 X ambulance delivering flowers in North Carolina. And for me, I was like, I've got all this information. I can go find this thing. And to this day, I have no idea what happened to it after the flower shop. because these are disposable vehicles. If Bob and Billy Bob need a sixer, they're going to go crush the ambulance or crush the van and go get enough scrap money. It could still be in someone's backyard. If you know where the ambulance is, contact Ed, and then he'll contact me, and then it'll be another show further down the line. Anyhow, after a few years of looking, I had realized that I was not going to be able to find the original ambulance. I had wasted a lot of time looking for this thing. It wasn't as easy as the General Lee. So I had become friends with Brock Yates just by asking him all these questions about his ambulance. And he was always like, well, why would you want to build that thing? And why would you want to do this? And he thought I was crazy. But I had found the correct van, and so it was time to rebuild the Transcon Medevac. Unfortunately, I built it exactly how they did. I put the big block 502 in it. I put the Holley 850 in it. I put the overdrive. We use a Gear Vendors transmission, overdrive transmission. It has four-wheel disc brakes, Hellwig sway bars, Bilstein shocks. It will fly like the wind. It has radar jammers on it. The license plate flips. It's got a drone, a K-band drone in it. It is as bad, if not badder, than the original one. During the build, Brock's health started deteriorating, and he would always answer my phone call. And I would be like, gosh, I really don't want to bother him. Like, he's the same Brock Yates that did Diamond P Sports and Car and Driver magazine and announced the Daytona 500, and he's answering Travis Bell's phone calls. I'm like, what? I mean, where am I? Not even close. So I had no idea what the rear view mirrors were on the thing. If you look at pictures of it, it's got these little bitty dinky mirrors that you can't see anything out of them. But I was very anal about it, making it exactly all the way down to the correct gurney, the front air dam, everything, mirrors. Brock was always nice to me. I still have his phone number in my phone. And my final phone call to him, I said, Mr. Yates. And he's like, it's the disc jockey, big, loud, booming voice. I said, rear view mirrors, Transcon Medevac. How's the van? I said, yeah, the rear view mirrors, the two sides. Oh, yeah. 1974 Opel Manta 400 or Opel Manta GTs. Engelmann mirrors. And I was like, I've been looking for these things for years, like these. I looked at little 550 Spider mirrors off the Porsche. I looked at all these different things. And all I had to do is make one phone call to him. And he knew right away that they were Opel Manta 400 mirrors. And they are. They are. He was absolutely right. So I chased down a set of those. And they're on the ambulance now. As the ambulance was complete and it started behaving itself, because this is highly untested, there's no reason why there should be a big block 502 in the front compartment of a 1978 Dodge van. The Cannonball Run reunion came around in Darien, Connecticut, and we were invited to attend. There was an evening where all of the original Cannonballers were going to tell their stories, their own car stories. And there's a night you would never miss if you were a fan of the Cannonball Run. So I drove out there, truck and trailer, and with the ambulance and the trailer, unloaded it. Of course, it was pissed off the whole weekend, but it made it to every place it was supposed to go. And that evening was the first night that I had met Pam Yates. And Pam Yates always told me that Brock's signature looked like a doctor, like it was very busy and very quick. And I had already met Hal Needham too, and I had Hal Needham sign the glove box door, and I had Brock Yates a few years prior sign the glove box door inside the ambulance. And I was only short Pam and Lyle. And Pam's standing right there in front of me, and she's looking at this thing that she had ridden in backwards, facing the wrong direction in 78, or in 79, and it was on fire, and she's got saline solution dripping down her arm, and her husband's going to get them all arrested. But it came a moment when we were to walk in for them all to tell their stories. And I didn't really know how to approach her, and it was Mrs. Yates, and blah, blah, I was just trying to, and she's such an approachable, nice lady. And I said, I need you to sign my glove box door. It was, said bye to a couple people, and it's one of those moments, car story moments, where it's dark out and the ambulance is under the light, and the light's coming in through the windshield, and she opens the door, and I hand her the Sharpie marker, and she looks down at her husband's signature and puts her hand on his signature. And she said, this is the prettiest signature he's ever had on this thing. And of course, I'm ready to cry, and she's having a moment with it. And she didn't write Pam Yates, she wrote Lady Pamela on it. And that's what she's forever known for. So it's another one of those reasons why I believe vehicles have a soul, because some of these invoke emotion. You can blindfold me and put me in that vehicle, and I can smell it and know what I'm in. And she had that moment where all of the nightmare that I've had with this thing, with 14 years and $110,000, came down to that moment in a parking lot in the Darien, Connecticut library, where this lady had enough time to have some moments with her own husband. Ever since we did the Players Run and everything else in the General Lee, it's time to go put some miles on this thing. And I really now know why Hal and Brock both warned me about building it exactly as it appeared, because it didn't make it 50 feet in Darien, Connecticut, and then it almost burnt down in the Palm Desert. The same things in which they ran into, we have run into. We attempted to make the C2C Express in 2019. I'll be forever known as the guy who left Ed Bolian without a ride in New York City. But it's just, god dang that thing. So we improved everything we could. We modernized it. We got rid of all the nightmare Holley 850. We put fuel injection on it. We were throwing belts. We put a serpentine belt conversion on it. It was pissing gas because I had two gas. It holds 70 gallons of fuel. We replumbed it. We did everything to erase this DNF that I promised Hal Needham, and I promised Brock Yates, and I promised Pam Yates that I would erase the DNF that appears in Wikipedia and all the record books and Brock Yates' book. And now it has a DNS because it did not start the C2C Express, and now it did not finish the 79 Cannonball. So fingers crossed, we are going to get it across the line, and Ed and I will finally finish what they started in 1979.
We'd like to thank Glassparency for sponsoring the VINwiki YouTube channel this month. We're also excited to give you access to their prosumer glass treatment kit at a discount. All VINwiki subscribers will be able to get $10 off the regular price, so it's just $39.99 using the link below. Every kit also comes with a special offer for discounted professional installation if you choose. It's a great product for an awesome company, and we really appreciate Glassparency. We hope you do too.